This dude. Oh God. Oh, it's so blurry. Stop being blurby. There we go. All right. I don't need that right now. What I do need is my wife.
I've been here the whole time.
He's absolutely been here the whole time. Don't ask any questions. Hey, everybody. Welcome again to another exciting and, of course, compelling episode of No Dice. The show we do here on Torchlit Tavern where we just discuss like TTRPG. Grip it and rip it, bud. Don't go slow. Get in there. Where we discuss all sorts of TTRPG bullshit. Because that's what we're about here. We're about TTRPG bullshit. So, anywho's, as I was saying, I'm Jeff, your Torchlit Twitch Master, your Twitchlit Torch Master, your normal host of this experience. Lately we've had the wonderful Katie Mischief, or usually we would have the wonderful Katie Mischief as my co-host, but lately, subbing in, we've had the inexperienced but eager Henry here to help us. That's him. That's what he's like, guys. In
there you
case
go.
You didn't know. It's a front row view. There it is. Anyways, today, if you tuned in, you probably know what we're about.
If you tuned in, you probably made a mistake. The channel you're looking for is above us.
That's rude. Anyways, if you tuned in, I hope you didn't tune in by accident. I hope you tuned in entirely by purpose. By purpose, on purpose, next to purpose, whatever your prepositional phrases for purpose. Maybe I should just not speak today. Henry, you've got this, right?
Okay, so we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop RPG, 5e, 2e, all of the above, Pathfinder, which is essentially 2.5, 3.5. So
3.75 is what it's the closest to. The first edition is like 3.75. Anyways, I got this. I appreciate that you tried. Today we're going to talk about TTRPG stuff. You don't know what TTRPGs are? That's tabletop role-playing games. Now, most of these games, the big ones, he listed them off. You know your Dungeons and Dragons. You know your which way is going to be best for the camera. You know your Pathfinder. Maybe you know GURPS if you're fucking old school. Maybe like some Call of Cthulhu. Maybe Blades in the Dark.
And honestly, maybe even if you've just played Baldur's Gate.
Maybe you've even just played Baldur's Gate and you're like, I like this. What was this based on?
Mm-hmm.
It's all TTRPG stuff. So if you found your way here, somehow, some way, what we're going to discuss today is building a dungeon. I've talked about like that sort of building a dungeon in principle on this show before, but today we're not just taking the principles of building a dungeon, we're taking the sort of real life application of it. We're going to talk a little bit about like some tools that you can use depending on how creative you are, some ways to do it, and some basic ideas. And we're going to get into this. One of the reasons we're getting into this is because our dear baby friend Henry here, who's new to the whole show, actually expressed interest in like being able to run something for us because we're going to have some complications.
It's like interest and obligation are two different things.
I mean, there was no obligate there. You were not obligated.
I know.
But to be fair, he expressed some interest, and he started asking questions, and I was like, "Well, we're doing No Dice tonight. Let's talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things you need." So before I even let him ask a bunch of questions, which I'm sure his brain can come up with 10,000 or more, before I let him do that, I'm going to let him build up a couple of them. And I'm going to explain kind of some of the basic principles about building a dungeon. When you're building a dungeon, specifically, like you want to be like old school dungeon crawler dungeon. You know what I'm saying? You want to go through that like traditional Dungeons Dragons experience. You're not talking about that fucking I built a world and a town and like these NPCs matter for whatever fucking reason. No. You're not doing that dumb bullshit that I do all the time on this show. No, you want to go fucking nitty gritty. I want to play a goddamn game. Let's do some Doom style fucking dungeons. Let's get in the Underdark like fucking Baldur's Gate. You know what I'm saying? You want to get in there. Well, the first couple things you want to really think about there is how you want to think about how big you want to make it, how easy you want to make it to navigate, and you want to think about how many players you're going to run through that. Like if there is a design number of players or if it can be adjusted, you're going to think about how difficult it needs to be for those players, whether you're going to make it just like Tomb of Annihilation, which if you're familiar with TTRPGs is one of those old school fucking things, what were they called? Old school modules that literally was designed for you to just send character after character after character through. Like it's hard as fuck to survive. You just basically have like 4 or 5 characters ready because when one dies, you just bring another one in. And, you know, or you could do something that's like more puzzle based, have a bunch of puzzles in there, and then you really got to question like, you have to.
How smart are your players?
How smart are the people you're running through that dungeon? And here's the deal. Like, you can have really smart people, and they can still get stumped by the dumbest thing, especially because the more customized that puzzle is to the people that are playing with you, the more likely you are to have misunderstood something that you thought they could do. So things to keep in mind.
But, and then there's also things like you think that you can never predict how someone's brain is going to interact with something. You think that something is going to be very niche, very sneaky, and then it's just immediately boom. This we could talk more about that later, but I have a perfect example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know. You never know when you're going to encounter those sort of things. And, you know, it's about how much trust you have in your players too, right? If you're going to give them puzzles like that, they won't just Google the puzzle or something like that. Like, and then, or how much you care if they just end up doing that, right? There's so many elements just in that in alone, but let's get back to it. Are you going to make it like you want to think about the difficulty, the length, the size. Do you have a designed end? Are you going to put not puzzles? Are you going to put treasure throughout it? You know, loot in different places. What does that loot serve a purpose? You know, these are the things you want to really consider when you're building something. You know, some people will build a dungeon that will take more than one session to get through. And some are just gonna build something that they think might take a session, but you're done with it in a half an hour. You know, that's really going to be a little bit of trial and error. But what we hope to address here is just kind of some of the things that you will come across when you're actually building it, not the ideas and the broader landscape of like what does a good dungeon make, but like some of the stuff you will actually need to help you figure this stuff out. So, getting into that, Henry, what do you got for me?
So, I kind of figured we could just hop straight into it and kind of reiterate some of the questions that I asked earlier, because I sent Jeff an image of a world map dungeon that I'm assembling currently. And I had a bunch of questions that I was asking him and Katie Mischief earlier about building that world, because I've never done it, and how difficult to make some things, where to put traps, where not to put traps, so on and so forth. And I figure that we could just go through the building process and my thought process as I was creating this, and Jeff could just intervene as we go. Obviously, Jeff would be doing the building because he's got the application set up. But so just room by room, I can kind of explain as we go my thought process, and he can intervene like, hey, here I would recommend this because of that, and so on and so forth.
Sounds like a plan, my man.
So first and foremost, I was like, they need to start in a room. So
Definitely.
I wanted to kind of go with the concept of just forcing characters. You wake up in a room, strangers, you don't know how you got there. It's very Saw-like. You just wake up and you're like, where the hell am I? What's going on? And I wasn't sure how much to include in this room. Really a direction I wanted to go. I knew that I wanted it to feel like a dark, dank storage room with not a lot of utility to it, just kind of scraps of wooden crates and miscellaneous things. And then have that room lead into a hallway. And that hallway would have a door that branches off on the right-hand side of the hallway as you're walking in. And that would lead into an actual storage room with storage crates full of expired goods, expired tomatoes, cheese, everything you could think would be in a storeroom, just expired. Old, decaying, expired. But full. And then have that room lead nowhere. And have that be the only visible door coming in. So you leave one room into a hallway, and that turns off on the right to another room with no exit. So there's two doors. And actually in the room that you wake up in, I wanted to have like a wooden stick or something of the sort. And in that hallway, as you're coming out of the room you wake up in, have there be a hole in the wall that if you were to take the stick from the room you woke up in and poke it through that hole, it would open up another door that's a sliding wall, like a hidden wall door. And I wanted that to lead into, let me bring it up. I'm trying to go off memory right now. Pictures. There we go. Oh yeah, so I wanted that to lead into like
oh gosh,
weaponry style room. So kind of an armory, kind of not. Jeff, you know you can underlay those, right? So you could just like stick one under another.
Like this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just trying to find the pieces I want the best.
And so that room, the hidden room, just be kind of a weaponry, a place for them not necessarily to loot up, but if they feel like there's things that they want that they can get their hands on, I want them to be able to grab it. Like, hey, there's a box of knives here. I take 3 knives with me. Whatever they feel they want, a pike, just simple stuff, nothing crazy. And then in the corner of that room, I want it to lead into another hallway. That's what?
Sorry, go on. Keep going.
Am I going too fast?
No. This just doesn't do what I want it to do yet. It's okay. Move on. Keep going.
So I want that to lead off into a hallway that is essentially like a diagonal hallway out of the corner. And in that hallway, it's probably an 8-foot long hallway, nothing crazy, and blood coming from underneath the door on the other end. Not a lot, but just enough to make you like question, like, oh, hey, there's blood. And then when you open that door, it leads to a large room, but it's got a wall divider that you have to walk along to see around into the open, not ballroom, but ballroom-sized room. But right when you come through the door into that walkway, they would be confronted by a scared dwarf or gnome or something, and it would kind of just be like, I'm lost, I don't want to be here, what's going on, blah, 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 blah. They can bring him with, they can kill him, they can do whatever they want, I don't care. Not an important NPC.
Unnecessary NPC. Got it.
Yeah. And so as they go down that walkway, when they turn the corner to look into the grand room, there's a pressure plate that if they're not paying attention and they trip the pressure plate, will push them in. The wall behind them will push them in to the ballroom with no escape behind them. And if they're not together when this happens, it could force one of them into an altercation by themselves. So you kind of got to be with your party, like paying attention. You're in a dungeon. I feel like that's something that, in my experience with D&D, sometimes people get too comfortable and they spread out a lot. I'll be over here, you be over there. Not metagaming, but kind of to an extent, like, you know, a little bit of what's going on over there and a little bit of what's going on over here. So you could be talking to the gnome, the other guy could walk down to the end of the hall, and boom, he's pushed into the ballroom. Now you have to figure out how to get to him, and he's got to figure out how not to die. Because in that ballroom, I want to have a mother arachnid and her spawn to attack. And by the way, this room is dark. And at the end of the room, there's a hole that's been broken into the wall. And you can see a little light emanating from in that room. Yeah, that's perfect. A little light emanating from that hole in the wall. And so they're obviously going to be drawn towards it because it's the only source of light. And in the process, they're going to get into the fight with the mother arachnid and her spawn, so on and so forth. Then when they get into the next room, it's going to be just a kitchen, and there's going to be wood-burning stoves, a butcher block table in the middle, and then like debris, leaves, branches that you can feel a breeze coming through, blowing in all of these dried leaves and branches and whatnot. And then you can go through the door into the next room, and it's an old growery?
Greenhouse?
But it's not a greenhouse. It's kind of just like another storeroom that they were growing plants in.
Well, if there's no light there, then they would only be growing fungi.
Okay, then yes, they would have to have light, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you got to think about the realistic application.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, I'm trying to, like, help you build this thing, but this is great, but it also is something that you need to...
Have time.
Yeah. Full disclosure, because I don't have this up on the stream, so the stream doesn't get to see this. Full disclosure, I'm working on many different tools, or working on different tools to potentially help him. And this is one of those things that you really like use a lot when you're making a game. Like tools, the internet's great for all the different kind of tools you can find to help you like make different versions of different things and all the different ways you can fit it together and blah blah blah. Like obviously nobody just like, it's gone are the days of like just purely drawing anything, but you could still obviously do that. You could get a whiteboard and draw all your maps. There are so many options available to you out there now that like you could do anything you like and nobody could tell you otherwise or question it or what have you, you know? But I'm working on like figuring out what works good to help him and maybe what might work good to help you as new starters. One of the things I'm working with right now is RPG Objects / Tiamat, which is great if you just want to make a tile-based map. Just throw down a bunch of tiles and you're all good. And it's a bunch of fun. But it's also like complex in some of the ways that you have to figure out how everything works and where everything is and work your way through it. So like it has its pluses, it has its minuses, just like anything would.
Mm-hmm.
But let's kind of keep moving forward as I start to look into some of this stuff. I'm just going to address the things about this map that you have so far, this idea.
Yeah.
So right now we're going to go very theater of the mind because I don't have anything to show.
I was going to say you can even use the image I sent you.
Sure.
That way it's just loosely they can visualize what I'm trying to verbally vomit at them quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. We'll take this shared screen. We'll copy the solo link and then we'll get, there we go. That's almost perfect. Paste. And is it going to show up? Show up.
No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
You're running dual monitor, right?
I'm running triple monitor these days.
Oh. Then yeah, just put your VOD Ninja on one.
I have it on one. And then everything else on the other. I'm working on it. I'm just having issues with sharing this screen for some reason. It doesn't want to. I don't know why. Should just share the solo link. Strange. All right.
Are you doing share window or share entire screen?
I'm sharing a window, but it's not just that. I was just trying to, I'm sharing it with you, so I should be able to copy the thing I'm sharing with you on the VOD Ninja and put it up there, but it's not letting me, so I'll do it a different way.
Actually, I was gonna say you could just hit F11 and then whatever streaming platform you're using, just capture monitor, capture display.
I get it.
Sorry, I'm just trying to be helpful.
I'm aware. All right, so right now it's going to be sharing that, but I don't really want it to be sharing that. I want it to be sharing this.
You put a block on my face.
No, well, that's silly because that block shouldn't be there. What is that? Is that? Oh, God. Give me a second while I size this correctly. Oh, gosh. What is that in the background? So many things happening.
What is that in the background? I feel like a crazy person because I'm like,
what's going on?
Oh. Yeah. No, that is the picture in the background.
Okay. Then what are you? Also a capture. Okay. Well, then get rid of you. Trash. Okay. Pardon me while I fucking stop being such a crazy person. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Slowly. This is going to be a slog for somebody to watch. They're going to be like, oh my God, what a mess these guys are. And they'll be right, gosh darn it. We are a mess. Okay, put it right in between our beautiful faces. All right. So, leave that there. Pull you off over here. And anyways, pull you off too. Put you over here. Pull you off. Put you over here. That's stuff I'm fucking with. So let's address this as it's seen right now. So you've got your first little room that you want to be like a dank storage room. Now, I will offer the idea, because it is worth mentioning, that you may want to answer questions as you're. What are you putting in your mouth? Anyways, you may want to answer questions as you're building this, right? Because you have to think from the mind of a player. Part of that is like they're going to ask a bunch of questions. Players ask questions.
Yeah.
You've been a player more than anything else, so you are familiar.
That is all I've been.
Yes. So you're very familiar with this very basic tenet. Players ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
So when they ask those questions, you have to kind of decide whether or not you have answers for them right at the gate. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I can't tell you, but I can tell you that that's something you should think about.
Yeah.
Because when you start them in this dank room, this storage room, they're going to wonder where they are, obviously, but they're going to ask questions like, do I remember how I got here?
Nope.
Does any of this look familiar?
Nope.
And when you start asking those questions, you can answer the early ones, but kind of what I'm implying is whether or not you're going to answer late questions from the beginning. So the late questions that might get answered are things like, or those early questions that might get answered later even, are like, mm-hmm. How did I get here? And through what means? And where exactly am I? And all this kind of stuff. So starting them in that storage room my advice when you're building stuff like this is to kind of answer those questions right out the gate. This is where they are. This is why they're there, and this is what for what reason they were put there, right? Which I guess is why, but it's also not. This is the motivation of this choice. So I think that if it's
They're
like
contestants on a game show. Get grabbed, don't die.
okay. If that's the case, then that won't have any bearing on this first room. But I'm going to give some examples, right? So if it's like some sort of magic thing, which would explain why they're not cognizant of what happened, then that first room could look like anything. And what it looks like can give you big insight as to the end goal, right? Maybe they start in what is a clean, pristine room with beds. Then they're going to be like, what? And then they move out of a clean, pristine room into like a dank hallway. And then even more questions arise, right? Is it all going to look the same? Is it all going to change? These are just things that I would pitch to you as far as like thinking about. But starting in the dank room that looks like a storage room, the things I would ask you to ask yourself is, did they wake up on the ground? What equipment do they have on them?
They woke up on straw beds.
Okay. So why doesn't it look like a barrack? Why doesn't it look like...
it's just on the ground. It's not blankets.
Okay, so
it's not anything. It's just straw.
Straw. They woke up on beds of straw in a room that resembles a storage room or is a storage room?
Resembles one. It's not really identifiable, the purpose of it.
Okay.
It's just kind of miscellaneous.
It's just like a dark, like a dimly lit room with straw beds. Is the straw beds the only thing in it?
There's going to be some broken crates, some empty shelves.
Okay. So in that case, it doesn't just resemble a storage room. For all intents and purposes, it was probably a storage room, right? Like that's the assumption they're going to make, right? Because if you just put it in a room that resembled it, it would be like, well, it doesn't have all the trappings of a room that was made for storage, but it looks like a room that was made for storage, right? You want people to be making these. You want to understand what assumptions these people are going to make, because that's what they're going to run with.
How about this? An emptied out storage room, a cleared out storeroom.
Sure. So it looks like a haphazardly cleared storage room. They move from there through the only door in the room, which leads to the hall.
Correct.
They go from the hall. They go into another empty storage room. Now, is this empty storage room as emptied out, or no? So this one has boxes and shit in it.
Correct.
Right. This is the room that has the rotted food in it. Correct.
Correct.
So the next question, remember I said at the top of this, you want to decide how difficult this is, what kind of challenges you want to lay in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
So you already plan to put a puzzle here, right? There's a stick in the starting room. That stick can be used as a key to a secret door in the first hall.
Yeah, it'll release a mechanism that allows the door to open.
Correct. It's a key. So you use.
Is that what a key is?
As it turns out,
I thought a key was what you used to get games online.
It's also a key, as it turns out.
Okay.
A key allows access, is what that is. Now you're getting it. Now you're thinking like a real DM.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got your first puzzle, which is the stick key. The first puzzle.
Would you call that a sticky situation?
I would call it a stick key situation.
Okay.
So then my question is, do you want them to face challenges along the way? Because if you do, you can hide more than just a puzzle in that room. For instance, something that everybody jokes about, but very few people that I've ever run with use. If you have a room full of boxes that people are likely to go through, then just put a mimic in it.
Yeah.
Because
And I know you can see they can't see it, but the little arrow on the bottom,
yes,
I decided that arrow actually says mimic storage box. I'm going to put a storage box mimic in that room.
absolutely. Now, again, as you can see written in the corner, he wrote for level 3. So, again, one of the things we're addressing is how tough are, or what level are these players you want to run through this. So he's got level 3 written, and in the interest of full disclosure, he wrote level 3 because I was like, what level? And he was like level 10, and I was like, well, they're going to run through some of this stuff then, because they will be very powerful. But if they're at level 3, one mimic, well, probably won't be too much. Again, we're discussing how many players with the potentiality. How many players do you think would run through this?
Assuming the circumstances we discussed, 2.
2. So 2 players might have difficulty with one mimic. But there's always room to sort of adjust that if you wanted. Maybe put 2 mimics in there. Maybe put a mimic and a dark mantle, right? There are many different things you can hide in corners and stuff like that that are meant to do exactly that.
So
Things
wait,
that blend
you're
in.
saying it would be better to have 2 mimics against them than 1 mimic?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you should, as you're building it, be deciding how difficult you want things to be. Off top, I don't know the CR. CR, by the way, is challenge rating. Off top, I don't know the challenge rating of one mimic. But one mimic could be a high enough challenge rating that it'll be not challenging, but enough for them to like worry about it. Or it could be that one mimic is really just a small inconvenience. And whether or not it's one or the other, entirely up to you.
I want it to be a mild inconvenience, something that'll give them a couple bumps and bruises, but nothing crazy.
Sure. So you've got the storage room with a mimic box. You've got the first key. The next thing that I'm going to talk about right out the gate is, again, we're talking about difficulty. The difficulty of this dungeon in general. So people are going to roll for checks here. They're going to make checks. That's your plan. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So when they do that, you have to decide a DC for these checks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what DC stands for, but I think it should be familiar enough to most people that they understand what DC is. You're going to want to set a DC for these checks. So small hole that's, not incredibly easy to see. And one assumes you're going to let them make either a perception or an investigation, and you got to decide which of those, or both.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd probably let them do both.
And then you have to decide the DC of any given check, right?
Perception would probably let them know that there's more to the room than they can see. And investigation, they will see what they missed.
Sure. Which you could only see it if you nail that investigation. So you could stump your people right there. 2 bad rolls, they stop dead in their tracks. In which case, you have to decide how long you let them spin their wheels before you give them something else. Which is something that is like legitimately one of the hardest things to consider when you're building. It's like, oh, I'll set this. I want it to be challenging, but not too challenging. I'll set a DC 15, and both your players roll under 10. Neither of them break a 15 for their investigation check. Like, you can let them just sit there and figure it out, figure something out.
But that's not the rule of fun. That's not the rule of cool.
Well, it's kind of the rule of cool, right? That's kind of my point. Is like there is no rules involved here yet, right? They failed the roll. Is about the only rule that's involved.
Well, yes, I'm just saying if they are flat stumped, and you just let the rest of the campaign be stumped.
Well, and again,
that's
we're
not
not
rule
even
of cool.
what we're talking about here is not a campaign; it's a session. So obviously,
Correct.
this is just a single session. So if you let the rest of the session be stumped, no, that's not fun for anybody. They'll just stop playing.
Yeah,
obviously, or they'll ask to roll again. And this is kind of what I'm getting to. The way you have it set up, they could make one roll, which is the perception, but fail the other and not know what to do, which is fine. I like that. One lets them establish, oh, there's definitely something more going on here. The other lets them establish what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But
and see, I even like from the moment you said they could get stuck here, I immediately thought of a workaround. Immediately. You're muted.
So the key here is deciding how long you wait before you give them whatever you're going to give them. Giving them a workaround is a given. Whether you're going to let them roll again, which, again, something you can decide to do, or you find some other crafty way to let them know, like, hey, there's something else here.
NPC Scared Gnome comes through.
Sure.
He now meets them at the door in the wall, and there's nothing on his end, so he's just got to bang on it and see if there's someone on the other side. And if they respond, he tells them how he got through that door.
Which is great. But you have to this is the key. You have to decide how long you let them flounder, or more aptly, brainstorm. Because players are going to player. And likely, you can give them other hints, and they can try other methods. I'm going to give you an example. If one of them chooses to be a fighter or a strength-based character of any kind, and they know there's something going on here, but they can't find the keyhole. Keyhole's invisible to them because they can't make the roll. But the player goes, I'm going to knock on the wall. And you go, okay. You can give you can give it to them for free. You can make them make another roll, whatever you want to do. But say they start knocking on the wall, and you allow them to figure out, like, this part of the wall feels different than the rest. This it looks the same, but it feels different. It sounds different. It feels different, whatever it is. Whether it's big stone or it's wooden walls. Wooden walls are great because then you can kind of literally hear the difference between a door and secret or not. And the wall, most of the time, be pretty easy to just let them know. Now, if they do that, then you can let them try to break it. Oh, this is fake. I'm going to try to break it down. Okay. Set a damage threshold or like a DC for a strength check or something like that. And let them
they failed that strength check.
Right.
They just keep failing everything.
If they keep
failing, I know there's a fucking door here.
If they keep failing, then you go with your absolute fail-safe. That's my point. Have a couple. Figure out what you're going to do. Figure out the path before you get to that fail-safe. It's kind of more fun when you let them kind of like do their own thing for a little while. Figure themselves out. Now, if they just kind of feel like they're giving up, that's when you go, okay, fail-safe. Here's the gnome walks through the door. Or walks up to the door, tells them what to do. Okay, cool. And here's something we didn't discuss. We assume they don't have any weapons on them because they go to a basic weaponry. But what do they have on them?
No, they have their stuff.
They have their stuff. So they have weapons already. They have everything they had before. Everything they created their character with for this. So they could just smash the door with their weapons if they wanted. And no matter what kind of door it is, eventually, if you have a heavy weapon, you'll break it. Just try hard enough. So they go into the basic weaponry, where they could pick up more weapons if they wanted. I would posit the question of, are you going to allow them to get any sort of non-magical weapon in here?
No.
Because otherwise, it's a room that they may not really even care about, right? Because they have their starting weapons.
Oh, wait, sorry. Non-magical? Yes.
Yes. Any non-magical weapon. So
Correct,
maybe they'll be like, oh, well, I really wanted to build this character with a greatsword, but greatsword wasn't my starting equipment option. So you can grab
I really want nunchucks.
Sure.
Can I find nunchucks? Yeah, dude. You get them chucks.
So it's filled with any sort of non-magical weapon. Then you move on to a hallway. You get to the blood. What happens when they investigate the blood?
Just it's dried blood.
You give them nothing for the blood.
No. What should I give them?
This is my point, right?
No,
I know what you're saying, but this is my point. Every little tidbit you give them is something that they're going to try to play off of. So everything you give them, you have to realize, like, am I going to give them something? Am I not going to give them anything? Does it feel fair? Like, and especially, like, imagine you have any sort of character, but let's say it's an intelligence-based character. You have a fucking wizard or whatever in there. The wizard goes up. Nat 20's his investigation on this dried blood. You're just going to give that Nat 20 nothing? You know,
no.
He probably gets like a 24, 20.
So I was just going with a generic, like, hey, they beat the DC. What are you giving them? Well, you found out that there's dried blood at the end of the hallway. Because I'm not just out of the gate going to be like, yeah, there's blood in this hallway. You walk into a bloody hallway, because that's not what it is. It's you walk into the hallway, you proceed through the hallway, and coming out from under the door, not a lot, but there's spatterings of dried blood underneath. Not like a pool rushing through.
Sure. Even if it's just a small, not even a puddle, but a small stain. My question is, if you put it there, and the idea is to, like, build some sort of intrigue, you have to understand that if you build that intrigue, you're going to invite them to investigate that intrigue. And you have to decide what you will give them for that. They get their perception check, so they see the blood. Okay, cool. You've seen the blood. Now they're going to investigate the blood. They do an investigation check, and they do really well. Do they get any information from that blood?
You find out that that amount of blood is just the beginning. You can sense that on the other side of this door, there's a lot more blood, and that this blood hasn't been here too long. It's just recently dried within the last couple days. And given that it's red blood, you know that it's mostly humanoid.
Sure. So you give them all that information about the blood. And obviously that's stuff you don't have to think about too heavily. You can come up with that off the cuff. But it's always good to have an idea, because you want every clue that they come across to mean something, even if that is to throw them off the trail of whatever you're actually doing. So even if it's meant to be a distraction, it has to feel like it's not a distraction for it to be a good distraction. So these are the things you got to think about on the way. Next, you get to the scared gnome. Now they're going to ask that scared gnome a bunch of questions. You have to come up with how much information he's going to give, because they're going to probably berate this motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and here's going to be the unfortunate part, because I've already thought about this.
Mm-hmm.
They know exactly as much as he knows, because this is as far as he's gone. He stopped here because he's fucking scared. He went through that door. There's a couple, there's not dead bodies, but there's a couple dismembered hands strewn about, miscellaneous body parts, nothing super like bloody that would be trailing out, just to keep that spot clear before you ask that question. But finding the dismembered hands and whatnot, he was like, nope, not going any further. I'm not going any further.
So like you say, players will often like split up, or like, you know, especially when it's just two people kind of run their way through things. So like one person probably asks questions while the other one goes, hey, I'm going to go figure out what's going on around here. So you have to figure out those details that the gnome's going to say as to why they're scared, so that you can put those details in the room in case one, they don't ask the gnome any questions, because you never know what a player is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or two, so that it lines up with what the gnome is saying. Like, oh, yes, here's the hand. What kind of hand is it? Okay, blah, blah, blah. Here's this. Where is it from? What's it look like? Does it look like it was cut off, chewed off, fucking broken off, ripped off, teared off? You know? All that stuff has to be stuff you consider. And again, you're building this image to them. Even if you actually built the like something, because the whole idea here is that you're actually literally building something for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a map for them to go through. But if you're going to have a map for them to go through, like, what are you going to put on that map? Are you going to put a sign, like a little blood stain on the map, so that they can visually see it? This is even more important when you give them a real map, because if you
don't want to reveal it all out of the gate.
How much do you want them to be able to see, and how much do you want them to only be able to find out once they've done that?
You want to reveal as you go. You don't want them to see the room and then have it be advertised bloodstains.
I mean, do you
first see that room? No.
Do you? Don't you? Like, these are important things to think about, right? Because maybe you do, maybe you don't.
I want every room to be a blank slate until they ask me a fucking question.
Then are you going to put it on the map after that?
Yes.
Are you going to then mark things down and start laying stuff down on the map?
If I'm actually using a program, yes.
Of course. We've got some people talking in the chat, and in No Dice, we really take that seriously. So let's read a little bit. We got so we need to know everything about our subjects. Henry, I need to know the size of your... Wait, that thought was supposed to be in my head. Well, Tony.
Speaking of that,
tricky devil.
On to the next one. Small clues are great. Sometimes it's important. But it builds atmosphere, bare minimum, nat 20 survival check example. You notice tracks of a big cat looking close. You notice that the claws are deeper than the back, as if it had been leaning forward to drink at the nearby stream. There's scat, both old and new, while vultures are in the air, indicating whatever the large cat killed is nearby. So you know the large cat had come multiple times to the water to drink, and it's feasting on whatever it had killed. You're now alarmed as you realize the big cat is likely to be within 30 feet of you, and your prey is watching you.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of stuff you're looking for, right? When you're building, you make those small clues to set the atmosphere, to potentially give warning as to what may come. Because, thinking about the fact that these are supposed to be trained adventurers, potentially.
Okay, so here's my plan. I'm not a wordsmith.
Tony.
I'm just going to design maps and then let other people be the wordsmith. You decide.
So this is kind of all of this is just more to my point, though. Like, are you going to give away what's coming on the way there, right? Because as you've said, there's
Not me,
definitely
Tony.
stuff on the way.
It's not me.
So you have the blood, you have the scared gnome. He's not going to give them anything. He's scared because of these reasons. Now, I do like the idea of the potential to separate them, right? This little trap, but I would ask, how likely is it to separate them? Not like, oh, how likely do you think it is they'll move into the room? But like, often people walk in a line. So is that first person the one who hits the pressure plate and shuts everybody else off? Or do you give it a little bit of time?
And that's going to be situational. If they are clearly walking together, it's delayed. They both get in. But if, oh, I turned around to grab something real quick. Nope, you're cut off. Sure. I'm still talking to the gnome. Nope, cut off. I let him go ahead a couple steps. You're cut off.
Sure. All of that stuff's important. All that stuff's the stuff you got to think about.
But the answer of we walk into the next room, you do. Okay. I let you both walk in.
Okay. My next question is, if they get separated, have you thought about the checks and the DCs that they'll have to make to try to break this trap? Okay.
And I've already thought about it because there can be along the side. I know I did it like a plunger, but that's not how I see it in my head. That's just for drawing purposes. I see it as like the full length of that wall coming in. Not like on a stick. You see what I mean?
Yes. Like it shuts them off entirely. It's the whole wall moving up. One big brick.
Yes, exactly. And then on the side that the gnome side would now see, there would be handles that this is going to depict whether, okay, you've been nice to the gnome or you've been an asshole to the gnome, how easy it's going to be for you to try and open that. Because now you have to try and do a strength check to pull that wall back. And if you've been nice, the gnome might be willing to help.
Sure.
But if you've been a dick, now instead of rolling a DC 10, you have to roll a DC 18.
Yeah. Drawing is a difficult beast. Okay. That's fair. That's an interesting approach there. But all right, so you get past that, right? That you've got that figured out. That's great. You're getting into the arachnid spawn. You're getting into the arachnid and the spawn, right? Obviously, when you're getting into the sort of minutia of being a DM here, of being a game master here, a GM, you got to think about all the different types of creatures that fit this basic description of what you're looking for, and what difficulty it is. Do you want it to be something giant and terrifying, or just kind of big and scary? Do you want them to feel overwhelmed? Do you know, all these kind of things?
As my daughters would say, spooky.
Spooky.
It's
Sure.
spooky.
It's spooky. It's very spooky. Like, I would say that I would ask, I guess, kind of, how tough do you want this situation to be? And do you want them to immediately notice the trouble they're in?
I mean, yeah, like when they get separated, if they get separated, yes, I want that to be an immediate, like, you are now in panic mode. You took one step too far, and you're in the danger zone. Besides, if a player sees your notes and it's not drawn really well, they might still not understand. So joke's on them.
Absolutely. He's referring to it's okay if your notes kind of look shitty. Yeah. And he's right. Obviously, you hope that your players aren't trying to take a peek at your notes, but honestly, the shittier your notes look, the better. Because it just means they're going to, if they do try to take a peek at your notes, they're not really going to understand it. They're going to be like, what is this? What's happening here?
Kenny, I haven't seen you in here before. How you doing tonight?
Oh, Kenny's been here many a time.
Oh, I haven't. Hello, yeah. Kenny. Pleasure to make your acquaintance. How's your night going?
Just to continue. So you want them to immediately notice, like, oh shit, there's some trouble here. So then when they get in there, you'll describe, oh, you see like 8 eyes shining in the dark. You see a large a spindly leg, or whatever level of description you want to do. Like you said, you're not a wordsmith. You do it however the fuck you want. But doing regular. Yes, definitely doing regular.
I'm doing better than regular tonight. I am not in anywhere near as much pain as normal.
Hell yeah.
My headache finally stopped today.
Hell yeah. So the next question there is like, you want them to immediately recognize the danger they're in, whether they're separated or not. Obviously, it's going to already put them on the spooky Yukis because the doorway shut behind them. And by the sounds of it, you've put no way in for them to get back through that door. The handles are on the other side.
Yeah.
So on this side, one just assumes it locks.
Okay, Tony's going to be my wordsmith. It's decided.
What's it say?
You realize you've taken one step too far. The wall is shut. Heart is racing. Blood is on the walls. Skeletons line the floor. The smell of death is in the air. You wonder how you will fare.
That's great. Absolutely. Could work, Tony. But so you give him that whole deal. The door is this trap door is presumably locked behind them. You can assume they can't do very much to get through there. Whether you decide that there is no chance for them to push through that door or there's a slim chance, that's entirely up to you. You set a DC if you want them to make a check, and if it's impossible, you just set the DC to something that's impossible. You know, they don't have to know what the DC is, but
Nat 20.
That's not impossible.
You can never argue a nat 20. That's all I'm saying.
If that's the way you want to play. I like it when some things are impossible. Sometimes I want it to be like, you can't do this. You can't roll your way out of this. Sometimes things just can't be done. That's how life is.
The dwarf flying isn't a thing in your worlds?
I mean, it depends. The
old dwarf flapped his arms so hard he took it to flight.
Yeah, it's likely not possible in my world. I don't just give you shit because you rolled a nat 20. That's not the way things work in my world. In any of my worlds, I do not reward a nat 20 for every little fucking thing. Because
lame.
If you do that, you end up going off rails very quickly. It gets too insane.
That is true.
Because you set a precedent. As soon as somebody gets one nat 20 and does one thing that should be impossible, everybody's shooting for another one, and eventually somebody else will get one. Now the next impossible thing is possible, and now it's like, well, I did it once, so I could potentially do it again. It's a whole mess. It's a whole mess.
So, like when someone picks their own pocket and you let them?
And then they spend the rest of the campaign
picking their own pocket?
Picking their own pocket. Exactly.
Yeah. Foolish mistakes.
It's things that like that's what happened in Artemis Fowl. Uh, it's things like that that snowball. So like for me, I don't like it. But anyways, if you're running it, you run it however you want to run it. You know, you want a nat 20 to just be the be all end all. Let it be the be all end all. Just know that it will result in chaos. But all right, so they get to this room. How difficult is this fight in this room?
Enough to leave them battered and broken.
So it's a tough one. It's even with both of them there, it's a tough one.
Yes and no. Just I feel like I would prioritize the storytelling on the DM side in that moment.
What's the story you're trying to tell here?
Well, in regards to, okay, they're struggling. They're not going to be able to kill this spider. The spider was bigger than I intended. I won't let it wipe them. Maybe I will. I'm not saying what I'll actually do when push comes to shove in the moment.
Sure.
But I'm saying that the decision will be made in that moment. Will I let them die or will I not let them die? Because I have that ultimate power. Okay, right as this spider was about to hit you with its final blow, a couple rocks came crumbling down from the sidewall and light shined in right into the spider's eyes, and the spider scurried away back up into its hidey hole.
Absolutely. And that's one way you could take it. I would, and there's a bunch of ways you could take that. I'll tell you, here's just a tip. When you want to sort of play things on the fly, there are multiple ways you can do that at any given point. Whether that's doing something like that where it's clear DM intervention, giving your players the plot armor, as you've pointed out there, Tony, or whether it's a gentle nudge so they don't even know you really helped. Maybe you roll, it would have hit, but you go, miss, and you let them keep fighting, and because you know that they've actually done enough damage that it'll be all right. Or maybe they can kill the big arachnid, whatever kind of arachnid it ends up being, but you know that all of the little spawn will kill them. So when they kill the big one,
run away,
right?
Because the big one died,
right? Or any number of other options are all available to you as far as like how you interpret helping them out. Right.
They missed the spell, and the rocks that fall are from a misspell. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's another way to do it, right? There's many ways where you can kind of covertly have helped them, or maybe it's still pretty overt you helped, but it makes them feel more involved. It's always good, in my experience, to make the players feel like they're really involved. Kenny here says, easiest natural way to get low intelligence monsters to run is to just do enough damage. You don't have to kill them to make them run. There's no animal doctor in the dungeon for them, and it's natural instinct to weigh risk and reward. Exactly. Yeah. Fight or flight kicks in. It's fight now, but it could be flight later. And that's the same way that you would respond as a person in those types of scenarios.
So players got it down to 50%, but they're about to die. You indicate that it took enough harm to scare it away. It has no real idea that it was about to win. Yeah.
Right. Most creatures with low intelligence have no idea whether or not they're going to be victorious against you. And if we're going to be realistic, if we're going to compare it to like creatures in the real world, only certain creatures even try fighting against something that puts up too much of a fight. If they take too much damage, they gotta go. Even the best hunters, you have like, let's just kind of go with the easiest thing to call to mind, like lions, right? A pride of lions attacks, and a couple of them get really hurt. They're probably going to back off because it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
Too many of them got hurt. They can't guarantee that they're going to take down that prey. It's time to go. Same thing with a bear. Like, bear goes in, bear's like, rah, 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 rah. Bear gets really hurt. Bear goes, fuck that. Survival is way more important than fighting this fight.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it is a matter of defense. Now, again, there's certain exclusions there. Like a bear will probably fight you to the death if it's got cubs nearby.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all stuff you just got to put up in the old mind palace, lock it away for when you need to use it. Like, oh, well, maybe this will be useful, and that'll be useful.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to go through this. They make it through, and they see that there's a broken wall on the other side. Looks like you've got the wood-burning stove, and what's that say? A table.
Mm-hmm. Like a butcher block style table.
And a butcher block style table. What is the intention for them to learn here?
Nothing.
Tony, based on the words you said, you don't have that low intelligence.
Yeah, if you accidentally end up between a cub and a female bear, you're probably in some deep crap. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely you are. Because even if you have what it takes to beat that bear, it will keep going.
Yeah. But to answer your question, Jeff, that room is to learn absolutely nothing.
The old red herring. You learn nothing from that room.
But you also will experience everything because of that room.
Elaborate.
So it has wood-burning stoves that are active. They are currently burning, yes?
Yes, sure.
You go in there, you find nothing in that room. You're like, okay. You go through into the next room. I've already expressed that there's a breeze blowing leaves and twigs and whatnot through this corridor, and that there's leaves strewn across the floor of this kitchen. When you enter the next room, the door swings closed and latches from the other side.
The spiders locked you in. Those tricky fucking spiders.
And some of the leaves that have been blowing through this corridor now catch a flame. And that room now is engulfed in flames, slowly burning into your room.
So that room is a trap. But
yes,
do you plan on killing them? Because every group.
No, that's why. Look in the next room.
Yes, there's a planter.
What is it? What is it?
Yes. So you want them to go. So I posit this, right? So you're saying that the leaves blow in, they start a fire. I would ask, how long before that happens? Are you going to trigger that like as soon as they go in, or are you going to give them some time? Are you going to give them an opportunity to maybe avoid that situation if they happen to be very smart?
No, it's going to happen in the room behind them, and they can't prevent that room from going up in flames.
So you're going to wait till they go through to the next room, and the room behind them goes up in flames no matter what.
Correct.
Okay.
So while they're exploring in the other room, they can smell the smoke start pouring out from the door behind them.
And you give them the means to put out the fire so it doesn't get into the room they're in, at least, right?
Yes, that's the water pipe.
Yes. No, I'm just clarifying here.
Mm-hmm.
So is this where you stopped? Did you wish to keep building from here, or was this
Yes, I wish to keep building from here.
Okay. So You've got some interesting elements here. You've got two potential relative. You've got one little inconvenience of a encounter, then a like a tough encounter that they'll probably have to take at least a short rest. Uh, and then you've got them going straight into a red herring of a room. But once they get through that, you get them into a room that will trap them there, so they can no longer go backwards, or at least until that room burns out. Now,
Mhm.
I realize that the idea is that you wish to keep building on top of this, but let's quickly address some of the things here. Hold on. So, um, hold on again. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a cough lately. So, addressing some of the things here.
Here's something terrible about being attacked by bears. Bears are often the apex predator in the area. They're omnivores, and so unlike carnivores, they don't try to immediately kill you when they attack. They're prone to pinning prey down and taking bites out of them. They don't care if the prey is live or dead. True.
Being attacked by a bear, awful. If you can avoid it, do that. Depending on what type of bear, learn exactly the type of defense you could do. Absolutely. Which, again, one of those things you could stock in your mind palace for when you're DMing or being a player. A bear attacks. What color bear is it? It's a brown bear. Ah, fuck. I roll into a ball. It's a black bear. I put my arms out real big. Give your players that opportunity. It's a lot of fun. The other thing that Tony says, spiders' web catch their feet as they travel into the room. All of a sudden, amongst the webs, a thick white cord is tripped and the door slams shut. They enter this new room to find. He's wordsmithed for you as far as why the door shuts and what happened. The spiders did shut that fucking door, sort of.
Yeah.
Love that. So they get into that room. This is the next question I have for you, right? They're beat up. They've just had to fight a fire a little bit to keep the room they're in from going to flames. I assume you build another puzzle here, because if you didn't, then they have no reason to fight the fire. They can just leave the room. So I assume that this room also has a puzzle as to how you can get out of it.
Mhm.
But are you here going to allow them to be able to take a long rest? Because they're kind of beat up at this point. You've established that's the whole point. They're going to be a little beat up.
If they have put out the fire, yes.
Okay. So
If they have not, absolutely not.
Sure. The only reason I'm asking is because when you're building something like this, you get to play with the idea of an adventuring day. This is something I've discussed many times, and many different systems use this idea. 5e is a big one here. 5e, everything is built around the adventuring day. An adventuring day should be something just like this, where you have several encounters within the day, and you shouldn't be allowed to have a long rest between very many of your encounters. You should be forced to become thin on the assets that only return
Also,
on the long rest.
If I'm really thinking about it, if this is to be a one shot, I would end it there.
Okay.
But
why would you end it there?
There would be an escape, a glorious escape that they could.
Sure, some sort of glory hole. Yeah.
Yeah. A hole where you can reach glory.
Mm-hmm.
Or glory can be thrust upon you. But a sewage grate or something of that sort that isn't necessarily available in a time crunch. Like, hey, that room's lighting on fire. Yours is going to be on fire any second. Do you want to fuck with this storm grate and hope that it's worth a damn? Or do you want to break that water pipe?
I would tell you that depending on what your means of egress is, you should consider the effect of the actions prior. Uh, so if it is some sort of grate or drain or something like that, drainage, likely not a storm grate because we've gone over the fact that this room may or may not have any natural light. Which in a world of magic, maybe it doesn't need natural light. Maybe there's some unnatural light that provides some version of fake sun to grow things. That's not the point. But whatever
I
the
have a fake
drainage,
son. I named him Kyle.
whatever the drainage is to get them out, I would posit, if you're using that method, would this water that's clearly got to be rushing out because it's rushing over all the way across this room.
I never said it was on the ground.
It's drainage. Drainage.
Did I say that?
You said it was a storm drain.
A storm grate.
Great. What does a storm grate do? Can you?
So, from someone who's lived in a home with a basement, it is very possible that there is a grate that leads in, that goes down, and then drains.
Sure.
Depending on the architecture.
You're talking about a below ground thing that prevents the room you're in from getting flooded by draining to below that room.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's possible. That's a whole other kettle of fish, absolutely. But this is kind of the point I'm bringing up. Think about these types of things and how they affect each other. Because you can't be sure that they're going to try to go up or they're going to try to go down or what exactly. You have to think about how all these things are affected by the other things so that you build a more dynamic and interesting expression of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's quickly go to chat.
And you don't want to go to chat?
I do. Actually, I like using intelligent beasts as well in games. Using their webs to create a trap is fun. Of course, there could be web everywhere, and sticky thread could get caught on players' feet as they pass through the door, and enough of those threads stuck to the door close the door by accident themselves. Absolutely, I love that. I love that. That also implies that the arachnids of whatever they weren't unintelligent creatures. They were intelligent creatures, which might change the dynamic of the fight that you're in. So if that's the way you're going to go, that's something to consider as you're moving through. Glory hole jokes are great. Thrusted upon you. Fuck the storm drake. I'll be your son. I'll call you daddy. That's all fun. Encumbered because of webs. Actually, a real idea of like whether or not you're going to make them have to suffer like difficult terrain because of the webs and stuff like that. All stuff to think about.
They'll essentially be Spider-Man from The Amazing Spider-Man in the cafeteria scene.
Okay, cool.
You like that pull?
That's a weird pull because I only remember the cafeteria scene from Spider-Man, not the cafeteria scene from Amazing Spider-Man.
Did I mix those up?
Which one do you think you were referencing? Andrew Garfield or
Tobey Maguire?
You were referencing the wrong one.
Okay. Then yes, Spider-Man.
Mm.
But yeah, you like that pull?
Web walk abilities could be very helpful there. Or then. Indeed. Good pull. Moving on. We're like an hour 30 into this. So I think
we're an hour past the normal no dice.
Yeah, we're not a full hour. Usually, if it's a good conversation, I'll let it go for about an hour. But we're a little bit longer than it normally goes. But with all that being said, I think
Rocks
all of
fall,
these
we all die.
And that's how you end every dungeon. Rocks fall, everybody dies. I think the point here is that when you're building a dungeon, uh, though I didn't discuss as many of the tools, which there are many tools to build a dungeon, including uh, the Tiamat builder for RPG objects, or like Dungeon Scrawls, another one. Incarnate, there are several different ways you can build a map if you need to build something original that comes straight out of your mind. When you're
Jeff,
building,
you want to take the map off our face?
is the map on our face?
A little bit.
Oh, you mean this little one? Yes.
Yeah.
I can move that one. I can make that one go bye bye. Bye bye. So whether you're using any of these tools, all of the stuff we talked about is sort of the key. As you're doing it, if you're making a visual representation of this stuff, you have to consider all of the little elements that you want to make a visual and able to be seen, all of the elements you want them to be able to find out through roles and stuff that they could just see, and so on and so forth. Building a dungeon, even if it's a small dungeon, like this one really is, it's only a grand total of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rooms. 6 rooms isn't that far. Isn't that long?
I will hire Tony as my ghostwriter.
Go ahead. What a great ghostwriter he would be. No matter what you're doing, you just want to consider all the stuff that your players are going to come across, all of the ways that you're going to use this stuff, and what story, if any, you're trying to tell. Like, I think by the end of that, the players got no loot. They got nothing really worthwhile. They got no reasoning. And they got the only thing they gained from the whole thing was experience, if it was experience based. So it was just some adventure. Now, you can always do that. No one cares. Like, people care, but like...
I created this one shot with the Torchlit Tavern motto in mind.
Tell good stories?
Yeah.
So tell me what story you were trying to tell, because that's important. If the idea is to have a subcontext, a subplot, what is the plot that this dungeon tells? Flavor. What is the plot that this dungeon tells?
Oh, is it not going?
I can't hear it, so...
Oh, that's upsetting.
Instead of regular treasure, I like using monster parts as treasure. Ooh, yeah. It can be difficult, though. Butchering, carrying, getting back to town and selling it, manufacturing, crafting new items yourself. Yeah, you can absolutely do that, right? Like, you could get the that was just a beep.
That's the sensor sound.
You could get the carcass of the mimic, and maybe managing fangs, venom glands. The key here is that they don't know why they're there. So if they don't know why they're there, they may not understand the value of taking any of these things, but maybe they will. That's all kind of part of the story you wish to tell. You can always say, like, hey, you're here because you know that there's some valuable stuff here, but you don't know what that is. And if at the end of the day, the valuable thing ends up being, oh, there's a bounty for a mimic that a wizard wants, or like, you could sell the parts of this spider. That's something you could do.
Hit them with the old cliffhanger. Ye old cliffhanger. You're in this final room. You're fighting this fire. You feel like it's a losing battle. As you're fighting this fire, smoke starts to build up from the ground up. And you guys know smoke doesn't go from the ground up. It goes from the top down. And you realize that it's gas filling the room. and you all fall unconscious. But as you fall into sleep, you hear a voice from the darkness say, "I didn't think they'd make it this far."
Put them in the next room. And then you cut. Now that tells the story. There's a cliffhanger there. There's some reasoning as to maybe why they were there. That tells a story. And that's exactly the kind of thing I was getting to. It's like, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you do or what you're doing, remember your goals at the end of it. If your goals are to tell some version of story, then make sure that whatever you do tells that story. Even if it all wraps up so simply in that little cliffhanger that fills with gas and there's nothing they can do to stop it, and they pass out, you give them a little tidbit, it tells a story. So if you ever return to that for whatever reason, you'll understand more of the story than you did before.
The combatants.
Even if the next time you return to that scenario, it's not the same people and it's not the same place, but maybe it's the same story. All right, let's quickly address some of the things that were said here. Kenny has great input. For my low magic setting, if you can get someone or know how to make goo insects, like from Wuxia novels. Oh gosh, Chinese novels. I don't know exactly how to say those, but I know what they are.
Wuxia, Xianjia.
Yeah.
Zhanja.
Yeah, Zhanja. They're Chinese like adventure novels. You can put enough insects together in this ceremonial jar to fight as a ritual. One of this, the one that survives gains power after eating all the rest of the combatants in the jar. You can then tether that creature to you like a spirit beast. So collecting eggs and such could be very good. These spiders protect a powerful item that draws them in. The evil emanating from this item has been concealed by their webs. As you defeat each one, the seal is slowly broken. As you slay the final arachnid, you're overwhelmed with rage and fury. The item has been released. Those are great. Those are great plot hooks, great ways to tell a story, and a great way to show how you can draw from multiple influences to sort of tell something, even if it's something that seems simple on the face. So I love that. I love that. Kenny and Tony, you guys are fucking killing it.
I agree.
Always show up to my no dices. Let's see. In Chinese novels, magical beasts often hover around plants and objects with spiritualness, which they are waiting to eat to empower themselves. I'm sure for the authors, this is a very easy way to place monsters around treasure. Yes. When you look at things as a writer, you find out that sometimes things are just a cop out and it's just a way to make things easy for themselves. All that being said, I hope that for anybody who gets a chance to watch this or who did watch it, because of course I try to put all our no dices on YouTube as well, it helps you craft a better dungeon when you're doing it. Like I said, I did mention a couple tools that you can use. You can always just Google Dungeon Builder. There's a vast amount of different things out there that you can use to help build your dungeon, to make it, to build a map, or you could just go off something pre-made and decide how everything works in that map. All of these are options. Or you could go theater of the mind and do what Henry did, as I showed you, and you just have little notes and let them draw a map as they go, because they won't know where they're going. It's all up to you to determine what is important, what you're using, how to play. But no matter what system you're in, no matter what rules you're using, as a game master, you get to you get to craft these things, these encounters, these dungeons, and so on and so forth, to challenge your players in multiple ways. And it's a great way to just kind of use every part of any system. So I hope it helps you. I hope it has helped Henry. And I hope to see you all again. As per usual, this is No Dice, the show where we just discuss TTRPG bullshit, but we have fun doing it. I'm Jeff, your Torchlit Twitchmaster. I'll do a little bit more closing stuff but before we get to that, let's let Henry do his outro.
Bye.
Beautiful. That's Henry, aka Mediocre Mets. He probably doesn't stream anymore, but if he did, that's the name he would stream under.
It's true.
He is a reappearing member of the Torchlit team these days. You can find us again this Friday, where normally we would be doing Mythcraft Country, where I run everybody through a brand new system that has been being play tested. But this upcoming Friday, I unfortunately have real world obligations. Some friends of mine are tying the old knot, and I can't miss that. As much as that might be fun, no, it'll be fun to be there. So you won't see my beautiful face, but based on the conversations we've been having, you may just get to see Henry try his hand at something, or we'll figure something else out. But please feel free to tune in Friday and find out what the fuck they're doing. Next Wednesday, I'll be doing Wacko Mundo, where I run a motley crew through my wacky and wild world that's not too serious, but somehow still very serious. So have fun with that. And maybe, I keep teasing it out, and maybe it'll happen. Maybe I'll start doing Sunday Fun Day again, where me and whoever wants to jump on with me, we play a little bit of video games, and we put it on the stream. So please give us a follow, a like, or whatever you want. Share us, tell your friends. Keep tuning in. Have a great time. Have a great night. Be safe. And as always, oh wait, before we go, the thing that started all of this is our podcast, Torchlit Tavern. We're on every place you can find a podcast, Spotify, iTunes, whatever it is. Please go check us out. Torchlit Tavern. Started the second campaign, which is Black Powder. And with that being said, as we always say here, tell good stories. Yeah, I always say that. Tell good beep. You silly son of a gun.
It was stories.
Whatever. Wherever that beep was. Beep good stories, tell beep stories, what? You do whatever you feel is right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.